Hi folks, Dave with DBS Tech Talk, and today we're going to talk about the Macaw GT600s Pro hybrid earphones. These have a dynamic and a balanced armature driver in them, and they are my first venture into dual in-ears. I wanted to give duals a shot, or quads, or however how many drivers somebody adds in, and these look like a good place to start. They had good reviews in a limited capacity online in the forums and in various other places, and so I thought that I would give them a try myself and see what I thought of them. Let's start with the packaging. They are a simple look, a very nice look though. They have a nice box to them, very solid, very well built, doesn't get damaged or anything of the sort. Nice little branding on the side, nice little picture on the front and one side, and then on the back they have the specs and a frequency graph. If you can, if you want to take a quick look at that frequency graph there. They are 16 ohms. They have a frequency response of 10 to 40, and they have a SPL of 98 dB. So they're pretty easy to drive for the most part, and they are 35 grams light and have a 1.1 meter cable. On the inside, it just slides up, and you have a nice little package cover. And then inside here, obviously your earphones would go in here and your cable would go underneath, and I was wearing them, so that's not in there. Then you have a slot for your silicone tips, a slot with a little carrying for the foam tips. I do wish that they had provided the little metal carrying thing that they have for the foams for the silicones. That would have been a nice little touch. And then also you have your tuning filters, and the tuning filters on these, you have these little itty bitty things. The black ones are for the bass, and then you have the gold, which is for the treble, and then installed out of the box are the reference ones, and those are silver. Inside the box underneath you have some usual papers, and then also, whoops, oh no, and then also you have this unique picture of the cables, and I just kind of glossed over it and looked, and just checked it back in the box, and it didn't make any sense to me, and we'll get back to that in a moment. And then you also have a little carrying pouch that they provide, which is unique, but I don't use it. You just undo the little strap, open it up, and it's like a little bag type thing, and you just put them back in there, and you wrap this around, and they go in. It's kind of a spongy faux leather feel. It's not stiff or anything. It kind of feels like cloth, but it has a leather look to it. It's kind of cool, but not something that I use or will use. And so these will just fit back in here. We'll just set that there. And we'll talk about, I should have taken these off earlier. The earphones themselves have a very nice look to them. The filter is very small. It's not super deep and long, and so it fits real nice in the ear. The ear tips themselves are, or excuse me, the earphones themselves are very small and shallow. They don't have a lot of size to them. They're made of steel. Have a little heft to them, but they're not bad. And then the little logo part is made of glass, which is really cool. Nice little touch. Filters just spin off and spin on, kind of like the RHA T20s series. And then you can just squeeze your tips on very nicely. Now you'll probably notice I have white tips on, and these come with black silicone tips. And the reason for that is I did not care for the stock silicone tips. They have a very stiff stem on them, and so when you put it in your ear, the silicone part that goes around it is very spongy and mushy, and it goes in and all you feel is the stem, and it just didn't feel right for me. Maybe I have sensitive ears. It might be fine for you. But I found that these tips, which are actually RHA tips, fit a lot better. They have more stiffness in the outer part, and then the stem is not near as stiff, and I don't know. They just feel better. As far as the cable is very nice. Has a nice strain relief. Also has very well built. Has a little marking on it. Says Macaw right there. Gold tip 3.5. Goes in, has a metal housing for the split. Also very nice strain release on both ends. The cable itself feels durable. Almost feels like an advanced alpha or advanced Model 3 type of cable. Very nicely built but light. Goes up into the ear hooks, which are preformed, which are nice. They're not super stiff, but they're not loose either. And they form very nicely to the ears, and they do not get in the way of glasses, which is a plus. And then you have the MMCX cable. Now remember that picture I showed you? So when you look at the tips, you're like, which one's left and which one's right? They don't have colors. They're not marked with letters. They're a little odd. And then on the earphones themselves, the lettering for the L and the R are really, really hard to see. They're etched into the metal and then painted over. And so you kind of have to get it at the right angle to see that this one's the left and this one's right. I mean, you can look at them and know by the way that they're facing. Excuse me. But at times, you're not looking at them. You're just kind of, anyways. And so when you look at the cable and you're feeling them, you notice that this one is smooth and this one has a slight bump. And so you're like, what? Why is that? And then you look at the picture, and if you really look at it, it shows R and L, and there's a bump on the left one and there isn't on the right. And so now you know, okay, if I'm feeling the cable and I feel the bump, that one is for the left. And you can just connect it and connect it. So when they're laying on a table or anything and you're in the dark, or you don't want to sit there and try to determine it, all you have to do is feel the cable and go, okay, this is my left one. And then you can just stick it in your ear. Goes around. And they fit very nicely. They don't pull. They wrap right around, sit on your underneath your glasses or beside your glasses, and then they just come right down. They don't twist, they don't turn, they don't pull at the strain of the Y. And you can just plug them right into your player. As far as sealing, you don't hear anything around you unless it's super loud, like dogs barking or a loud truck. So they're not noise canceling, but they are noise isolating really well, especially if you use the double or triple flanges, or the foams. Now the stock foams are fine on this. I just found that they make the music a little too bassy for my preference. But yeah, overall, very well built, really comfy, and super light in the ears. So Dave, how do they sound? Awesome. The first thing that I noticed with them when I had them on, the first song that I played was actually by the Lefevre Quartet, and it's called Seek the Kingdom, which is an amazing song, by the way. But anyways, um, you notice a lot of detail and clarity. They have a little bit of a warm tone to them, but it's smooth, detailed, and just wonderful to listen to. I didn't know what to expect because I've only heard single in ears, and there always been dynamics. So I didn't know what to think of the balanced armature. I didn't know what a hybrid would do. I didn't know how they would sound, but they remind me a lot of when you first get like a pair of planars and you're used to a dynamic sound, and then you get that planar with the bass and the treble crispness and airiness, and you get the bass thumps and stuff, but it's not all muddled. That's what kind of the experience was the first time I went from just a crapola type of pair of headphones to my planars. It was like, wow, I can hear a difference. I'm not comparing these two planars, obviously, but there's a significant difference in the sounds that you get. They are a step up from others that I've heard. Bass, well extended, very well balanced, has a nice texture to it and a tone to it, has good clarity and detail within it. It's not a bass heavy headphone, but it does have a warmer tone to it. Excuse me. And at the same time, all that does is just make it sound a little more natural. They're not as analytical. And then the mids, smooth, detailed, great timbre, sound very natural, and really good clarity and detail. The treble is slightly rolled off, but you do get a nice crispiness and airiness to it. They just don't soar to the high peaks unless you have the treble filter in. If you put the treble filter in, the bass drops out slightly and the treble really becomes noticeable and almost peaky. Somewhat like the CL750s can be really bright on some songs. That's the way the treble filter makes it. If you add the bass filter to it, the bass becomes very thumpy, very really in there. The mids become slightly recessed, and the treble really becomes rolled off. So I like the reference standard filter on it. Keeps them kind of even keeled, and makes them sound more natural. Doesn't make the treble super bright and doesn't make the bass super thumpy. It just kind of keeps it all controlled. Soundstage and imaging on these. The soundstage, for an in-ear, is actually very nicely spaced out. It's not super wide. I mean, you're not getting that feeling of around the room, but you're also not getting where it's right here on your ears. So they do have a nice stage to them. And then the imaging in detail, you can definitely hear from one side to the other and around your head. You can get very good clarity within it, and you can definitely tell right, center, left, and even right, center, left, center, up and down a little bit. There's some layering in it, and some. It's not a boxy set. It's not right, center, left. There is a little bit of detail within in the imaging and in the soundstage. I did notice that changes slightly when you use silicones and foam. The foam kind of makes it a little bit of a darker headphone, and also removes somewhat of the soundstage width and depth to it. But it becomes more intimate when you use the foam. Whereas with the silicones, it seems to open it up a little bit and give a little bit more detail and clarity. It can sound a little bright, especially with the treble, or with the treble filter in, or with more treble-based music. And so sometimes songs that have a lot of like flutes or higher end music in an orchestra, or sopranos and tenors, can sound a little sharp at times. So you may be reaching for the volume control just a little bit, or an EQ. But I wouldn't say that they're a bright headphone. I wouldn't even put them in the class of the CL750 by RHA as far as being bright. Even though I love the CL750, I know that some people think that that's too bright of a headphone, and so that would be a good reference for it. One person that really stood out as far as tone and sounding very natural on these headphones was actually Ronan Tynan. So if you listen to Ronan Tynan, he sounds like he's natural and he's in the room with you singing. And when he has a pretty wide range in his vocals, and when he changes and goes up the scale or down the scale, these do a really good job of keeping it balanced and not squelching or squealing when he reaches for somewhat of a higher note or a lower note. Another one is Brian Free, who is a tenor, who is really high and has a tone in his voice. And Brian also sounds very well balanced on it. And when he reaches for his high notes, which Brian can really get up there, he he doesn't squeak either. Now, if you play Sandy Patty, who is a really high soprano, female soprano, she gets really high up, and every now and then on the upper echelons, she can get a little harsh and grainy. So that I think that's where that roll off starts showing. Is it'll start to grain things a little bit more and make them not as clear and detailed when it's really high out in the frequency. Even though it has the frequency range, it's not as detailed in the far extremes. Bass also does that. If you get really deep rumbly bass, it tends to get a little clouded at times, but for the most part, everything is pretty much separated and detailed, as long as you don't get to the dire extremes or have your volume super high. Also, I found that these are source dependent. It sounds really good on my HiFi and Mega Mini. Sounds really good on my Cyan N3. My LG V30 pushes them and it works well, but because they don't go into high impedance mode, they are limited. Ooh, careful here, Kitty. They are limited to volumes of 75, and it kind of limits what you can hear and what you can't hear on some songs, especially if it's a quieter song, which is kind of disappointing. So if you play it on like one of your desktop setups, I find that it works very well. The topping stack pushes it very nice and very easily and sounds very clear. But it does turn it, because it's a very analytical sounding DAC, turns them to be slightly bright. The Music Hall DAC 15.2 and my iUne X7S amp sound really wonderful, and because that DAC is not quite as analytical as the topping, it's a very smooth. It sounds very, very nice and natural. Sounds good on a tube amp also, but an amp is not required. As far as portable amp, the FIO Q1, I think it is, sounds good. I do not have an issue with that. It either sounds nice and smooth, and so whatever it plays with, these work well. You just have to be aware of a little bit of graininess and clarity issues on the far extreme ranges of the frequency, and they have a warmer tone to them. They are not a neutral. They are not a monitoring in-ear, but they are an enjoyable. Just sit back, relax, and listen to music, or work out in the yard, or exercise, or whatever you're doing with them. They're amazing, but for mixing and monitoring, these are not it. In comparison to the RHAs, the CL750 has this nice little aluminum plate for all your tips. I wish that Macaw would have done that, but overall, and RHA does come with a nicer case. I'm not currently using it because I like my little hard case plastic one better, but the leather one that comes with the CL750s is way better than the one that comes with the Macaws. Build wise, they're probably about the same as far as detail and durability. Cable's longer on the RHA. Cable's a little more spongy and tangles a little bit more on the RHA. Does have a slider, which the Macaw doesn't. The preforms on the RHAs are not as nice. They're a little more loose and flowing. I find that they sometimes pop out from behind your ears. Do not have a detachable cable. And the housing actually is a little bit easier to just fit in your ear than RHA. I find that they do stick out a little bit more. But I find that the RHA itself in the ear is more comfy. Isolation, whole lot better on the Macaws. Sound wise, these are a brighter headphone, more analytical, have more detail in the bass and in the mids and in the treble. These are more detailed, but they are a brighter headphone than the Macaw. So if you're looking for something to just sit and chill and listen to music, the Macaw would be the one. If you're looking for something with more detail, monitoring, editing, that type of thing, the RHA. They're both about the same price, and both are excellent. Just depends on what your usage is. Overall, love my Macaw GT600s Pro. They are a good value for the money. Well built, great warm, natural sounding to them, and a nice entry into the hybrid in-ears. Dynamic and balanced armatures play well together, and I'm very well impressed with the sound of them. This has been Dave with DBS Tech Talk. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.